Hello, and thanks for joining us on the midweek edition of Journalists Hangout. I am Kemi Fola Adeyemo. Well, it's 58 days from now to the time Nigerians will head to the polls to elect a new set of leaders that will pilot the country's affairs for another 4 years. The question we've been asking all this while has been, how set are you for the 2019 elections? Today on the program, lawmakers jeer and cheer President Buhari as he presents 2019 budget. Appeal Court nullifies order recognizing Kashamo as the 2019 Ogun governorship candidate, orders retrial. And later on the program, gunmen kill former Chief of Defense Staff Alex Bade. I'll be hanging out today with Mojid Jamil and Adeni Kunu. Journalist Hangout starts now. Well, after much doubt occasioned by the strike embarked upon by legislative staff, President Muhammadu Buhari appeared today at the National Assembly to present the 2019 budget proposal before lawmakers. And at the presentation ceremony in Abuja, President Buhari defied cheers and jeers by some lawmakers to outline his economic plans for the 2019 fiscal year to the joint session. In the 8.83 trillion naira budget proposal, the recurrent expenditure is 4.03 trillion naira, while the capital expenditure stands at 2.03 trillion naira, with the oil benchmark pegged at $60 per barrel. Well, Nigerians also witnessed another drama in the House of commotion that the hallowed chambers has assumed. The words of the late American statesman Dan Webster comes to mind, which says nothing happens in any legislative body that isn't purposeful. The question we'll begin today's conversation is as to what purpose was that drama. Once again, welcome, gentlemen. Good evening. I'll begin with you. But just before we start, let's just show you a bit of the drama that played out today.
The 2019 budget proposal is based on the following assumptions. A, oil price benchmark of $60 per barrel. B, oil production estimate of 2.3 million barrels per day, including condensates. C, exchange rate of 305 naira per American dollar. 4, real GDP growth of 3.01% and E, inflation rate of 9.98%. The total revenue is projected at 6.97 trillion naira. A total expenditure of 8.83 trillion naira is estimated for 2019 budget, comprises A, recurrent cost of 4.04 trillion naira, recurrent. B, debt service of 2.14 trillion naira. And C, statutory transfers of about 492.36 billion naira. D, sinking fund of 120 billion naira, and E, capital expenditure of 2.031 trillion naira, including capital supplementation, but excluding the capital component of statutory transfers.
Distinguished senators, please quiet down.
All right, so you've seen the drama that played out as the president was presenting next year's fiscal document. While we await your contributions to all that played out today, let's begin with you, Mojid. We saw the president refusing to balk now, the obvious distractions there. But what did you make of that?
You could see that that was a well-rehearsed action because they actually came with a freedom song. But then I would say that it's an irresponsible act, I mean, of gross misconduct by whichever group pioneered that in the hallowed chamber, so to say. You could recall that happened at the reps' chambers, right, where they normally hold a joint session because of the size of that place. But then you could see there were jeers and shares. But then, I mean, those sharing were saying cyberbar. If you watch for those who watched the full, it right, was televised live by most TV stations. I mean, we actually watched it. But then you could see, if you note carefully, you could see that that song was it's not a spontaneous song. It was something that was actually well rehearsed. But whoever did, and you could hear a particular voice, I mean, that was commanding. I mean, at that of, I think it sounds like that of a Dino Menai. But then, we have 58 days to election. If you want to politicize everything, Buhari is the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and in that hallowed chambers, is not the president of APC, ABGA, or PDP, or what have you. He is the president of Nigeria, and he came in to actually. After several efforts to tag him as a certain Jubril from Sudan, after that failed, and also after making sure that the National Assembly workers, I mean, they deliberately refuse. These are people that refuse to pay the workers of the National Assembly, the civil servants that, I mean, they earn peanuts compared to the allowances. And now look at, I mean, they tried to embarrass the president today, but then the Buhari I know, I mean, characteristic of him, he didn't even waver. I mean, it continued. And you can see the tone of the budget today very clear and distinct. I mean, despite the fact that they were jailing and rather, yeah, they were booing him, I mean, he didn't budge. So, but I think that act is very, very condemnable. And I'm surprised that the president of the Senate, who is also the chairman of the National Assembly, could not caution his members and also could not apologize to the president for that act of ignominy from both chambers.
That said, how would you react now with what Mojid has just said? Now, so many pointers from his analysis, but what's yours, Nee?
Well, I think it is important to understand the antecedents that surrounds today's drama. And the closest to that was the rejection by the president to actually give assent to the payment of state government for certain projects they did on behalf of the federal government, close to about 500 billion. The president declined assent because he said there was discrepancy in the amount that they should pay to the states. They were supposed to pay about 435 billion. It came back in excess of 440-something billion. So that simply means almost $1 billion was added by the lawmakers by the time the document left their chambers to get the assent of the president. That's the closest. And the president said that the comparison they did of both documents did not reflect that almost 1 billion extra. So you can also understand that before now, there had been issues. He rightly mentioned something about the Jubril issue. Social media was agog yesterday about the fact that the president celebrated. The wife did not send a tweet. The son did not send a tweet. The daughters did not wish him any birthday. And they took us again to Sudan. And these are the antecedents of what played out today. But I think that lawmakers should understand that the nomenclature distinguished, or the adjective that is always attached to their name, should actually reflect in proper light. Let's understand another instructive thing. He presented a document that affects in excess of 198 million people in the most populous black nation on earth. If for anything, drop issues of partisan politics and allow Nigerians to listen to what their president is delivering so that they can take him to account on what he has done. So I think that Nigeria should endeavor, especially those who occupy the upper echelons of power, that there are certain messages you do not pass to the world, especially when the elections are very near. We don't need this. If at all you feel the president has not done right, then clean your stable and present yourself in such a way that you can win elections rather than want to smear him. Nobody and no democracy is perfect, but this is what I didn't expect to see.
And we also know how crucial this document is because it represents the fiscal document that will take us into the election year. Yeah. And now we're seeing all this. But then about the issue of, what may have transpired before what culminated today, talking about the relationship between the executive and the legislature. We know the bills. You mentioned the particular bill. And of course, we can also talk about the amended election bill, electoral bill.
That's also
that is also. We don't know what the lawmakers will decide next. Yeah. Now, what do you think? If there is indeed a link now, how does it help matters?
It's almost certain that this 8th Assembly will not pass this budget. I mean, their term expires in June, or rather, they will still have a sitting in June, next year. And from antecedents, the earliest we've had any budget passed was probably July or thereabouts, by which time their term will have expired. I think their term actually comes to an end May 29. But then, like Kuno actually said, a bill, or rather the budget for reimbursement for federal projects went to the Assembly, 4.5 billion. For goodness sake, I'm from Ekiti State. If Ekiti did a job of 20 billion on behalf of the federal government, for example, and there was, the Federal Ministry of Works okayed 20 billion, and they sent it to you for approval before it gets to go back to the president. And
it came back.
It came back
25
at 25 billion naira. I mean, is it because we are in Christmas periods that they are giving Christmas bonus on roads done? Actually, in total, they padded these monies that are supposed to be paid back to the states for the fund of project by 808 million.
Yeah. But for whose benefit?
That's a question that you have. Let's say this. Do not forget that up until this moment that we speak in this studio, there are still issues about the 2018 budget.
Yeah.
And it's all about the fact that the figures are actually different. The president had asked for violence. They've told him nothing of the sort. The president asked them, all of those constituency projects of yours, could you move some money out of it so that we can have people's life become better? They said no. They told the president himself instead that he should bring supplementary budget, that will be approved. Now let us understand that there is another thing very close to this, which was the initiative of 71 lawmakers less than a week ago about the mood for a parliamentary system of government. Some persons have said the closeness of such mooting before election doesn't suggest well. But I tell them, you don't have the time for lawmakers to actually sponsor or raise emotion as far as their job is concerned. But the picture we must create here is to find common grounds to work within a democracy, and that has to be ultimately to benefit the people. That is very important. But it's obvious from what we've seen, particularly this 8th Assembly, that it seems more of self-serving rather than the people of the country, and that is what we do not need. But another thing that they've done to dig themselves in is 58 days to the elections. People who can think very rightly and logically understand that indeed these people have not represented the nation in the light that they should have done originally. So it is left for the electorate to begin to look at all these things closely and put pen to paper regarding what their next line of action will be.
Majid, now can you also talk about the implications that this action of the lawmakers will cost them? Okay, you said earlier that the Senate leadership didn't say anything, especially the Senate president, who happens to head the entire legislature, and didn't even get to make any speech, as is the tradition. Neither did we see Honorable Dogara, commenting afterwards now because the president left. What do all this imply for the legislature?
It's politicking taken too far to me. Fine, we are getting close to election. I mean, these are guys, the distinguished and the honorable members, quote and unquote, that started in a particular political party. Shortly before elections, they went to other parties. Now they became opposition onto the main party. Now, so we expect that, there has been a lot of hiccups, a lot of hues and cries as a build-up to what we are seeing today. And like you rightly mentioned, we should eschew politicking when it comes to issues that border on the lives of 190 million Nigerians. But for this present crop of National Assembly members, their interest is of paramount importance to them, not the interest of Nigerians. Recall that they bought themselves SUVs at the time we are all
recession.
At the time we're in recession.
Yes, of course.
And this is about the time that they have been fighting the president for telling them to stop padding the budget. The 2016 budget, which was the first one presented by Buhari, was padded by as much as about 1.2 billion. Yeah. But the president would not have any of that, and he would tell them, until you clean up these books, and you see, they keep pushing, hiding on that so-called constituency projects to pad up the budget, duplicating the efforts of the executive.
I want your quick reactions now, because Nee also said something, also commented. I had also had it in mind to talk about the last week's decision now of 71 lawmakers who are proposing that Nigeria switches to the parliamentary.
Yeah.
What has happened? We saw that today's drama, so to speak, now had many people commenting on the traditions in other climes. It's similar, but somehow different. If this happens to be the norm now of legislators interrupting the president during his address to them, is it healthy?
Whether we run a parliamentary or we continue with the presidential that we are running, it is the individual. It is what is in their mind that they will push out. Even we've seen it in the parliament in South Africa or parliament in the UK, where
Australia and Canada,
where they have issues, but then they resolve it in a very robust manner, not the kind of jeers we see. This is quite irresponsible of a National Assembly. They are called distinguished members and honorable members. But what they did today falls short of the coinage of those two.
We're talking about those jeering, but then there were also a group of cheerers, so to speak. Now, did they help the situation
if you look at
in retaliating?
There will always be counter positions, and I think it would have been foolhardy of the Buharists to borrow the words of the governor of Kaduna State, El Rufai, here, that you don't have people support the man that is the political leader of the ruling party. I think strongly that it is only expected that when you have people jeer, those who stand in support, they have to cheer. Right. It may not have been seen as civilized politics, but that is spontaneous response to the indiscretion of some people who felt that their auspicious moment of ignominy was to have done what they did today. But I have to say again here, referring again
let me hold you. Charles is joining us from Borno State. Thank you very much. Please carry on.
Okay.
Carry on, please. Carry on.
All right. Thank you. Please, let me make my contribution. Please, it's not Charles. It's Charles. The name is Charles, not Charles.
Right. Charles, you said?
No, Charles.
Charia.
All right. Charia. Apologies. Please continue.
C-H-A-R-A-S.
Okay, all right. All right. Apologies. Please continue.
On the issue of, let me make my contribution too. I'm not surprised that these lawmakers behave the way they were behaving. One, you expect that most of them are bunches of thugs that were employed, that were elected. And at least now they have it has shown to the Nigerians that really they don't deserve to be in that particular house. And secondly, particularly the person, the commentator who was saying that there was a voice at the back, particularly generalized voice. It's normal. You expect that because generalized is not different from normal motor parks who most of the time they try to see that at least they throw the attention of people. Now,
apologies, it appears we've lost connection with Charat. Thank you very much for your comments. But let's quickly look at the breakdown now of this budget. Majid, what would be your verdict now on the quality of this document?
Well, for now, it remains a proposal, an appropriation, until it's passed into law. Like I said, I don't expect that this crop of assemblymen would have the time, because very soon they'll break and go for elections.
They're even going on break from tomorrow, and then by the time they return...
By the time they return, they will be very close to elections. And after elections, more than 40–50% of them are not coming back. So they won't even have time. You see, we'll see an empty chambers by the time we come back from the elections. But then, I think it's a promising budget, 8.8 trillion. Right. But then I think we should look beyond oil. Now, with the way oil is going, we are still we are still basing. The benchmark is $60 per barrel, whereas as we speak today, we're on $58 per barrel. So we should look.
Is it ambitious?
Yeah, it's too ambitious. But then the way to do it is to ensure that we don't have a monolithic economy where only the oil determines our budgets. Thank God now we have a gold refinery coming up that will boost our economy in terms of internally generated revenue, not only depending on oil. Then we also expect that the rails will start coming, and we'll get in some more money from non-oil sector, especially transportation. And also we need to add value to what we produce in-house. And I think the coming up of the Dangote refinery will add a lot of pep to our economy, but I think the first streams will be coming at the end of 2019, from the forecast. So it's an ambitious budget, but if you follow it closely, but then my fear now is because of the election year, we might not really have time to really dwell into that budget, especially given the fact that it might coming late before it is passed.
Let's quickly get the views of Obi. Good evening, Obi from Lagos State. Please join the conversation.
Good evening.
Good evening, you're live. Please speak.
Are you hearing me?
You're live, Obi. Welcome. Please join the conversation.
Mojib and the Kunu.
I greet you, sir.
In a quick one, what happened at the Senate today is very condemnable, very disgusting. To say the least, I'm highly disappointed. And the man, the whole world has been looking as the chairman of the National Assembly. I'm highly disappointed. And I believe 90% of Nigerians are disappointed. He has shown his true color, and Nigerians should keep watch on him and the next election. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Obi. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Also, let's still retain this arm of our conversation now. With what has been said now, with the points made by Majid, I would also want to buttress, because the president is expecting 6.97 trillion now projected revenue now, which will be a breakdown from oil, of course. But then let's look at this expected non-oil revenues now. The president said today that, as kudos to him, there has been a road construction in every state of the Federation. And then looking at the railway milestones now being recorded by the Buhari administration, Can we also look at these pointers as expected revenue?
I think that that's a very smart way to go, but I'd like to break it down a little further. The various areas where railways are being constructed, what is the volume of human traffic and goods around that area? When you put railway lines where you have less human movement, less movement of goods, then you're not able to recoup the money spent on it. Then if you also look at the country, you'd find out that in the southwestern part of the country, it would have been advisable if they actually deployed more funds into taking advantage of water transportation. Lagos is an example. These are initiatives, non-oil initiatives that will help the country. So while rail may be good for long distances and heavy luggage and the rest of it all, you also must consider short movement around areas and what could be done. These are very, very important things to look at. Then I move away from that and talk about the issue of non-oil solid minerals in the sense of what I want to talk about. Until we deliberately look at that particular part of our constitution that has not addressed who owns the resources in the state, then we cannot fully achieve our potential in terms of getting monies or foreign exchange from non-oil areas. Let me also tell you this for the records, that taxes will actually be put on certain things. One of the things that actually helped the government was to have actually did what they call VADES, Voluntary Asset Income Declaration Scheme, that gave tax window to people who were defaulters to bring in the money. Then another thing that I must commend the government for that looks likely to be bolstered is the customs, where for the first time in its history, it was able to gross over ₦1 trillion in terms of what comes into the coffers of government. These are non-oil areas that we can explore. But then, look at the maritime and freight forwarding. How do you harness the potential of the maritime industry, for instance, if the Apapa port has remained the way it is in excess of 15 years without attention? You don't maximize such without making investments in infrastructure.
All right, let's bring in Umar now from Nasarawa. Welcome, Umar. Please carry on.
Thank you. Good evening.
Carry on. You're live, please. Umar, good evening. Carry on, please. Make your point.
Good evening.
Good evening. Make your point.
Yes, I am Umar in Nasarawa State. I want to lend my voice to this discussion. I want to believe that Mr. President must have had prior knowledge of what was going to happen in the National Assembly today. But because I believe that he is working for the masses, he insisted that he must attend the session. And what happened today, like other contributors state, is an unfortunate situation.
Right.
And I think it is right time for us to differentiate between politicians and national interest.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Umar, for that point you've made. Agriculture, Majid, have enough giant strides been made by the current Buhari administration? He lists it as one of his key achievements. Now I'm talking about us, eroding or lifting the veil, so to speak, off our non-oil sectors.
Oh, quite a lot. And I'll talk about one single item. Rice importation. Nigeria is saving between $15 billion and $20 billion annually now on rice importation alone, because the anchor borrowers scheme of the federal government, being anchored by the Central Bank of Nigeria, has been able to grow more local farmers, especially in Ebonyi, Ekiti. You can see the joint venture between Lagos and the Kebbi State, they called Lake Rice. I mean, that has saved the country a lot of foreign exchange in terms of pressure on the Naira-dollar exchange. So the government has made very giant strides in the area of agriculture, especially with production of local rice, and also the integration or the cooperation between Nigeria and Morocco in terms of fertilizer. Now, a bag of fertilizer, which used to cost as much as 10,000, is now going for between 5,000 and 6,000 naira. This is a scheme coordinated by the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA, where about 11 fertilizer blending plants have been equipped to come back to life. So most of the fertilizer are now coming in with as an exchange. I mean, they get some of the urea from Morocco, while the government funds the local blending plants to come back to life. So that has really helped in terms of agriculture. There are so many other takeaways that we have made in terms of agriculture. All
right, that said, we'll take a break on Journalists Hangout to return with our discussion on the appeal court nullifying the order that recognized Kashimu as the 2019 Ogun governorship candidate. That court also ordered a retrial of the initial case. Stay with us for that and more. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Journalists Hangout. Well, the concept of you win some, lose some is what makes politics tick. The major contenders in the crisis-rocking the Ogun State chapter of the People's Democratic Party are getting contrasting fortunes now, as the factional governorship candidate of the party, Senator Buhari Kashamu, who had enjoyed some legitimacy, had his quashed. The Court of Appeal sitting in Ibadan nullified the order that recognized him as the PDP flag bearer and ordered a retrial in the case. His opponent, Oladipo Adebutu, can heave a sigh of relief, albeit temporary, as the legal battle continues. And it surely does, because Senator Buhari has reacted, saying he will appeal, go on to the Supreme Court. But then he says the Court of Appeal didn't recognize his contender, that's Mr. Engineer Adebutu, as the PDP candidate, only ordered a retrial. I mean, what's your interpretation?
Well, I think the law courts know better to have actually taken that position. And I must say for the records that it's a suspicious path to tread upon at the moment. Let's look at how a child has become the vampire. I'm not calling any names here. When you know that a child has a tendency to become recalcitrant at a particular age, they begin to instill discipline however well you could so that you can manage the excesses of that child. When the PDP wanted to gain leverage at that senatorial zone that Buhari Kashamu comes from, they allowed him to take control. He took control and they licked hands and supped with him. Unfortunately, they're having another thing to battle with at the moment, because the same man they used to achieve a particular aim is the same man that they want to throw out with the bathwater. And it's not going to be easy. So for Buhari Kashamu, don't forget, number one is the fact that you can't use me and dump me. You cannot take advantage of the opportunity I gave the party in this state, and now you want other things to happen. That is one. Then secondly, don't forget that I see the prison gates ahead, and somebody wants to enter therein understands that it appears as if it has been unlocked and waiting. And it is just at the snap of the fingers that somebody could cross the Atlantic and land in jail. So there's a whole lot of thing called immunity that obviously somebody is aspiring to get if at all this senatorial position is gone with the winds. So it's a whole lot. But coming back to that core of your question regarding the position of the court, anything that makes any court of competent jurisdiction gives a verdict, it must have actually checked both sides and what is before it. And the best decision to have taken at this point was to have said a retrial is possible. So go back. So it simply means itself that the court probably found out that there are certain things that didn't go well with the Adebutus of this world, and they couldn't just give everything outrightly to him or recognize him. The best thing they could do now is retrial, and the retrial they must go for.
But Majid, what does this substantially mean? The appeal court said the Adebutu side wasn't sufficiently served. Now, there's an element of a lack of service. Now, hence, go back to the lower court now. But his name, the Kashamu angle or faction is saying their list, they have already, or the court has ordered INEC to recognize their party. That was at the lower court now. But what does all this legal drama mean? Ogun
is going to be very, very interesting 2019. Very, very interesting.
But even before, we already see so many
Yes,
signs,
that's what I'm saying.
Right?
Ogun is a very, very interesting, both from PDP and APC. But then, localizing it to PDP now, the court gave a very ambiguous judgment.
Yeah.
But then, to legal luminaries, they understand these things more than we
Laymen.
laymen, so to say.
Laymen of the law.
So now, but I'm happy that the deputy governorship candidate of the PDP, as we speak,
For the Buhari faction.
for the Buhari faction, Dr. Ruben Abati is also a lawyer, so I think he understands. For him, you see, for him as a senior lawyer to have pitched his tent with Buhari, then he knows his onions, especially having played at the top echelon of the party. He was a media aide
To the former president.
To the former president. So he understands presidential power, presidential politics. So he's bringing that to bear in Ogun. Now coming back to what the court is saying. The court is saying, go back for the trial. Before you come back again, probably it's, for now, INEC has Buruji Kashamu on his list.
Yes.
And down to the local, to the assemblymen.
The entire, it's not just Buruji, right?
Buruji,
but the entire Depot, the Dayo faction,
the
right?
Dayo faction of the party. So, now before you go, you see, it will take, I see another, except it is given an expedited trial.
Expeditious trial.
Like what we have, we might have another Jimo Ibrahim and I think what happened in Ondo State.
Talking about the former man?
Yeah.
Jegede matter.
And the Jegede, yeah, another Jimo Ibrahim and Jegede. We might have it on our hands.
Okay.
I mean, a candidate for the PDP in Ondo against Akeredolu only emerged 2 days to the election. So now we are seeing this and we are watching. I hope the Supreme Court will step in on time and decide clearly, because what the appeal court has done here is to just say, go back for a retrial. I mean, it's very silent on who the
actually is recognized in this matter.
Recognized. So INEC has that. INEC might have to consult its legal department to know what to do as regards.
I wanted to
please address that INEC angle now, because
fantastic.
One is going to the Supreme Court, and another matter will also be starting afresh in the lower court.
I need to say this, that there are times when we look at what has bedeviled us politically, then I think the umpire must be empowered more. If we have to create a court that actually deals with electoral matters independently, it is high time we did that.
Okay,
I'm going to add more after this.
Let's bring Stanley from Taraba State. It's good to have you.
Yeah, good evening, ma.
Please carry on. You're welcome.
Yeah, good evening to the gentlemen on your desk.
Good evening.
Yeah. What happened in the National Assembly today is, I think it's as a result of no performance in government, because as a president and as a president, if you are calling figures, like some of the figures he rolled up, like let me say, like some of the projects he rolled out, like the second Niger Bridge, Enugu Onitsha Expressway, those places, if you go to those places, nothing is in that place. And as a senator, if you are representing a place like that, and you find out a president is saying.
All right, thanks a lot.
He mentioned the second Niger Bridge. Let me quickly help him here. That at the moment, the federal government has mobilized, and the first part of the bridge is in excess of 49 kilometers. They have been paid to complete first 11 kilometers of that. So I think we can settle that part of the second Niger Bridge. Now, coming back to the issue of INEC, I must say here very clearly that the problem started when party leadership began to speak from different sides of their mouths. Before the party primary started, I like to refer to the APC. The constitution of the APC says a candidate can emerge either through direct, indirect, or consensus. Clearly in the APC constitution, and I know that it is similar in the PDP constitution. But before the election, the leadership of the party came out to say they're going to toe a particular line. I think that's the first wrong step to have taken. You should have, first of all, altered the provisions of your constitution to reflect the current position. because you cannot have a constitution and the statement you make is in dissonance to the constitution that guides even you, the leader of the party. So when we talk about crisis in the party, it comes from the party leadership first not understanding that whatever it is are the rules, even if it is inconvenient for you at that particular point in time, you have to do it. Then talking about INEC, I think INEC must really show strength when it comes to issues of this nature, such that it doesn't look as if every decision from the court it takes. INEC's position ordinarily should not have been taken to court because it is supposedly independent, has authority, and it is the final arbiter appropriately in election issues.
Can its independence work in this regard? If indeed we get that situation, can INEC independently do its work without any input from the courts?
Yes. When we have this kind of issues, then INEC would have to rely on court judgments. But then, what he's trying to say is, we have a time frame that we're working on. Yeah. We have 58 days to election. Now, parties ought to have started their campaigns.
Right.
Yeah, full-blown. Full-fledged. So, but here we are, they are still in court, shuttling from the lower court back to appeal, and are also having an eye at the Supreme Court. So, well, they call it deepening of our internal democracy. But then, when a party is used to imposing, and like you also rightly pointed out, you see, you wanted to fight a particular battle, you went to hire a mercenary. And that mercenary came back, and you wanted to give him money as a compensation. He said, no, he wants your throne. So that is what they have on their hands. The hydra, the small tree they planted and now has a hydra head in Buhari Kashamu and is a law unto himself. So it should take PDP, Adebutu, a very serious legal battle to unseat, to remove Buhari Kashamu.
But we're talking about Buhari Kashamu now, that analysts are saying, the party is looking as being untamable. What kind of picture, how attractive can that picture be to the electorate?
In the first place, if you call yourself the party leadership, you should show strength. And that is the strength I want to allude to that happened at the lower chamber of the lawmakers today, where the president showed strength regardless of the jeers and the cheers. He did not even show that he was listening to those who were cheering him. He just did what he had to do. I think strongly that leadership is about strength. As a man, as a woman, as a group, if you form or you constitute the leadership of any group, you have to show strength. And psychology is a particular discipline that should be employed in every walk of life. You should have understood the antecedents of Buhari Kashamu in the first instance when you started frolicking with him. He said something very apt. You hired somebody to come work for you. The person you want to be compensated said, no, I want your throne. And it is going to be very difficult. I tell you, what we have on our hands could destroy either of the parties in Ogun State. And that's for the records here. It's deeper. He said they're in shallow waters. Because when shallow waters begin to take people in, it swells so much that the vortex even takes down the most experienced fisherman or the person who is the captain of the ship.
Your final take, Mojid, on this. Is this a matter that only the courts can solve? You talked about deepening internal politics now and democracies of the party. Does PDP have any hope?
Well, like I said earlier, I'll go back to where I started. It's going to be very interesting in Ogun. Like, we have 5 major gladiators now in Ogun. We have Buhari Surisaka, we have Buhari Kashamu, we have Adebutu, and we have Dapo Abiodun. We also have the Amosu
faction,
the AA. So it's like a 5, 1, 2, 3, like a 5 horse race now, and all of them are on equal pedestal.
So
yes, it's going to be very, very interesting. And Ogun is, if Kashamu ends up getting the ticket, there's no way the Adebutu family will support him, and they are also very powerful, and vice versa. Then for Dakpo, Amosu has made it very clear that he won't work for, he worked for Buhari, but not for the APC candidate. Buhari Surisaka is on its own. It's like on a roller coaster. So so it's going to be interesting.
Really interesting.
Very,
All
very
right,
interesting.
you can watch this space for more on that. But then let's talk about yesterday or last night's big news. When the mighty falls, ordinary citizens should begin to fear for eventualities. On Wednesday, Nigerians woke up to the unfortunate news that former Chief of Defense Staff, Air Chief Marshal Alex Bade, was killed by yet-to-be-identified assailants on the Abuja-Kefi Expressway while returning from his farm. Director of Public Relations and Information at the Nigerian Air Force, Air Commodore Ibikunle Daramola, confirmed the murder of the 61-year-old four-star general. Really sad development, but how did you ponder on this?
In the first place, I'd like to understand what the security architecture of former defense chief looks like, because I want to believe strongly that retiring from the service, having served at the highest of levels, doesn't mean your security details are completely withdrawn. And again, you want to ask me how they got him so easily that his driver was messed up and was killed. I think it speaks a lot to the kind of security that we have. Now, for some of us who have really traveled the Abuja-Kefi road going into Nasarawa, it can be free. It can really be free. If you leave, for instance, you leave Yanya, I have traversed that place, I can't count any longer. You find out that immediately you leave Yanya, maybe you get into Kefi, you're going upwards to like the junction that takes you to Plateau. It's always free to the right, to the left.
And doesn't seem to have the lack of safety records that the Kaduna Expressway has.
I doubt it. I doubt it. And that is why this man could actually have gone the way he did. It's a very sad thing to have happened. But at the same time, let us look at this. Less than 2 months ago, a military top brass was killed in Jos. I think in between that, another person got killed. Now, the picture that this creates is that the high and mighty are as unsafe as those who regard themselves as being low. But another thing you'd find out is to understand the intentions. This would not have happened, maybe, that's my estimation, by some common criminal looking for something. It appears to me that it's a calculated act. Because the man must have been going on that route time and again. But for this to have happened, so I'm very surprised that his driver got killed, he just got killed. And even when it happened, nothing happened, the people just killed him and they went away. Does it mean nobody was there? Nobody saw anything?
Majid, for what purpose now could Air Vice Marshal
Alex Bade.
To what end? He, of course, has a big case. He had a big case in court, money laundering charges now going to more than 2 billion naira, and that case was to resume in January next year. But what do you say?
We can only work on conjectures there now, because the man is dead until investigations are able to unravel what led to his death. I mean, we can only work on conjectures, but I think it's a very sad and unfortunate incident. Well, given the fact that, he's standing trial, that's just, by the way, it's going to be found guilty. I think 3.9 billion naira misappropriation of funds. But then that's just, that's before the court to decide whether it's guilty or not.
And what will even happen to the trial now?
That is it. I mean, it's,
you don't try a dead man.
The main culprit is dead now. So, but it speaks to our security architecture. I mean, we keep saying it, especially on our highways. Now, in Ondo State, Ekiti, Axis, Kogi, I mean, almost all over the country now we have kidnappings, serious security issues where people get kidnapped. Even after paying ransom, they still kill them. But this particular case, I mean, there's a lot of things to be unraveled there, especially given the fact that, like he said, himself and the driver were both killed. I mean, no, they didn't take anything. The vehicle was there. It calls for a lot of serious concern. I mean, this is a route he passes. I mean, he has a very big farm there, so this is a route he passes almost on a daily basis, so to say, from investigation, from preliminary investigation. So, I think the security agencies really need to dig deep and unravel the immediate and remote causes of the circumstances that led to his being killed in such a brutal
But let's
manner.
quickly also talk about Alex Bade's legacy. A lot, as in social media is rife now with a lot of legacies to him, even including setting up a radio station, 107.7 in Abuja, to highlight the achievements, the operations of the agency under his watch, of the Air Force, and all that. Recall that, of course, this is a highly decorated officer.
Yes, or it was, as it were. It's even difficult for me to still refer to him in the past tense because it's still shocking. I don't want people to talk. You see, I listen to some people here who do not understand the dynamics, especially when you find yourself in governance and when you're out of governance. I've actually sampled opinions after his demise, and many people said, well, at least somebody was standing trial, his nemesis. I said, how could you say that? In the first place, the courts have not given the verdict that should actually maybe single him out as being guilty or not. But more important, because we're just talking about Alex Bade, don't forget that he has a family that is bereaved at the moment. Yeah. And when such deaths happen, it doesn't leave the wife or wives or children the same for their entire lives. Yeah. This was a man who left on. People should begin to look inwards and the impact on families of such sudden exits of a man.
Let's quickly bring in Suleiman. Suleiman, you're welcome. Please quickly carry on.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
You're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, sincerely speaking, what I expected our government, the legislatures, whosoever is involved, including the citizen of this nation, is to emphasize over security issue of this nation. Nothing will work well if the security of this nation is not controlled, because everything is getting out of hand. At least whatever that we will do to boost the security of this nation should be done quickly.
All right, thank you very much, Suleiman. I'll let you wrap up, and then Mojid will have his final take.
The point remains that if somebody like Alex Bade had gone, and we've not heard anything yet, let's also remember that it's in this country that Ebola Ige was killed. And as we sit here, we do not know who killed him. I think people must understand that if they came for the Buddhist, and you say you are not a Buddhist, when they come for the Jew and you find yourself to have come from Israel, then you understand where it actually hurts. And that is something very instructive now. Right. This one should be the final time somebody of his stature or caliber will be killed, and they let it go that way. Because if this goes again, it's going to actually rub off negatively on the security operatives of this country. And I must say here...
But it should also be extended to the fate of the common man.
No, I agree with you. But I say here that if senior citizens of a country cannot even have security guarantee, every life is important. But on the instance of losing people who occupy high offices and everybody folds their arms, then I tell you it may be trickling further if it is not checked.
Your final take, Mojid, going by the mixed reactions now to the sad death.
Yeah, just last month, a retired general was brutally murdered and buried in a well. This is happening again. I mean, this is a case of probably assassination or murder. Yeah. I mean, and it tells so much about the state of our security, and the president needs to do something urgently about it, because if this is happening to the high and mighty, then what happens to those of us who are just common men?
All right, gentlemen, we appreciate your time with us here on the midweek edition of Journalist Hangout. Mojid and Adeniyi, thank you very much for joining us. Well, that's all on Journalist Hangout. Join us tomorrow for another edition of the program. Also watch Journalist Hangout on other platforms showing on your screen and on your YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. Don't forget to drop your feedback with us at Journalist Hangout at tvcnews.tv. Thank you for keeping us company. We'll meet again tomorrow. I'm Kemi Fola Adeyemo. Bye for now. God bless Nigeria.